faithfully deliver value and interpret great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, I'll interpret the book called Exploring Ancient Egypt. The author is Ian Shaw is a lecturer in Egyptology at the University of Liverpool. He's been focusing on desert regions. His research on human activities gives him deep insight into ancient Egypt's material culture, society, and economy. In this book, the author comprehensively presents the current state of Egyptology research, painting a detailed panoramic picture of ancient Egypt. When you think of ancient Egypt, you might first picture pyramids, mummies, and the like. Speaking of mummies, before reading this book, I thought ancient Egyptians made them by removing internal organs, filling with preservatives, and wrapping in linen. But actually, mummy making must follow two steps. First, the cutter opens and dismembers the body, then the embalmer reassembles and preserves it. Why must it be done strictly this way? This actually ties back to a mythological legend. Legend has it that Osiris, son of the earth god, was a highly capable ruler, greatly respected by all. He had a brother named Set, who constantly plotted to kill him and seize the throne. Set crafted a beautiful box to fit Osiris's body size and held a banquet, inviting Osiris to attend. During the banquet, Set brought out the box and announced that whoever fit inside perfectly would win the gift. But who knew? As soon as Osiris lay in the box, someone locked and sealed it, then threw it into the Nile River. After Osiris was murdered, his wife searched everywhere, finally found his body, placed it in a coffin, and buried it in a swamp. But who knew when Set passed by that place, he actually tripped over the coffin. Enraged, he stole the body again at midnight, chopped it into pieces, and scattered them in different places. So Osiris's wife found his body parts from various places once more. The body pieces were buried on the spot. Later, Osiris's posthumous son was born. After growing up, he defeated Set, avenged his father, dug out the body pieces, pieced them together, and made a mummy. With the gods' help, he resurrected his father Osiris in the underworld, making him the god who judges the dead. Because of this myth, ancient Egyptians strictly followed the dismember and reassemble steps when making mummies. However, ancient Egypt's legacy extends far beyond just mummies and pyramids. The ancient Egyptian artifact we're discussing today may not be as famous as pyramids or mummies, but it's absolutely representative in Egyptian history. It carries diverse information about ancient Egypt, showing us a comprehensive picture beyond death-related topics, even serving as a microcosm of Egyptian culture. It's the Narmer Palette. In 1998, a British archaeologist discovered this palette in an early temple ruin in Upper Egypt. It's now displayed in the Egyptian Museum. Though its discovery didn't draw swarms of journalists worldwide like Tutankhamun's tomb, over the next century, this stone slab sparked debates among Egyptologists about Egypt's political origins, kingship, religion, art, and writing. So, what exactly is the Narmer Palette? You can see its image in the audiobook notes. It's a green, shield-shaped stone slab, 63 centimeters tall, with carved reliefs on both sides. The front center features two lion-headed monsters with long necks intertwined, forming a circular ring. Inside the ring is a depression for grinding eye makeup pigments. Above the monsters stands an early Egyptian ruler wearing a crown and beard, holding a scepter, dressed in a tunic, striding forward. Based on hieroglyphs, this ruler is likely Narmer. So who is Narmer? He was ancient Egypt's first pharaoh. Originally, Egypt was divided into Upper and Lower Egypt along the Nile. Narmer first unified them by force. From Narmer's unification until 322 BC, when Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, the Egyptian era ended after approximately 3 millennia of pharaonic rule. Thus, this palette came to be known as the Narmer Palette. So what's the real significance of this stone slab? And what special meanings do its carvings hold? How exactly does it help us understand ancient Egyptian culture? I'll explain from historical perspective kingship, identity, gender, and writing. A fundamental question is whether this palette was created to record a specific historical event. Observe it closely. Front side. Before the pharaoh's figure, you'll find four shorter flag bearers accompanying the king on inspection. 10 decapitated bodies with heads placed between their legs. Early historians speculated this likely followed a battle or execution ritual, but later scholars question this, realizing modern historical concepts often don't apply to Egyptian records. Most surviving Egyptian texts preserve traditions rather than objectively recording events, like documenting mummification steps or religious burial rites. Thus, many ancient texts aren't historical records. So, is the Narmer palette recording a military victory or merely commemorating past triumphs? Yeah, this remains hotly debated among Egyptologists. Flipping to the back, we see Narmer depicted larger and stronger. Wearing a conical white crown, he raises a pear-shaped scepter while grasping a captive's hair, about to strike the captive. Above him is Horus the falcon god, beneath his feet, two naked figures, likely captives or dead enemies. Such king striking captive scenes are extremely common in Egyptian art. Traditionally, these images symbolize pharaonic power. The falcon god Horus represents the close relationship between kings and gods during conquests. After Narmer unified Egypt, all subsequent pharaohs claimed to be divine agents and incarnations, believing gods granted them supreme power. These concepts of kingship entered modern consciousness through murals, texts, and early historians' interpretations, creating a mental fixation where people only associate pharaohs with divine right, overlooking individual rulers' impacts. Pharaoh Hatshepsut became a victim of such mental fixation. She was ancient Egypt's female pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, often called Egypt's Empress Wuzekshen. Being female, some Egyptologists argued she needed male support to reach power, suggesting men behind her held real authority. However, many such views stemmed from Egyptologists' personal assumptions and biases, without concrete evidence. Later research confirmed Hatshepsut was among few female rulers who independently governed Egypt without male subordination. Moreover, she deliberately wore masculine attire and a false beard to be perceived as male. Due to gender bias, many Egyptologists label her a pacifist, citing no military conquest records during her reign. But historians counter that if absent records imply pacifism, many male rulers could be called pacifist too. For example, Pharaoh Horemheb barely engaged in foreign campaigns during his rule. Yet before becoming pharaoh, Horemheb was general under Tutankhamun, leading campaigns against Hittites and in Palestine, proving he was no pacifist. Regarding mental fixations in pharaonic studies, the author cites another example. One of Egypt's most famous pharaohs, Ramesses the Great. Ramesses the Great, 19th dynasty pharaoh of the New Kingdom, was a legendary figure, both a great monarch and undefeated general. During Ramesses the Great's reign, ancient Egypt reached its peak power, but this brilliance faded swiftly after his death. This description reflects current popular perception of Ramesses, seen as mythical and exemplary monarch. But is this accurate? Historians discovered early researchers attributed achievements of Middle Kingdom pharaohs solely to Ramesses, crafting his legendary status and reinforcing stereotypes. So what kind of ruler was Ramesses the Great truly? This requires further investigation. Therefore, when studying Egyptian kingship and pharaohs, we must avoid mental traps and maintain objectivity. Beyond kingship, Narmer palette research extensively explores national identity issues. Earlier, we mentioned the palette's scene of Pharaoh executing foreigners. These scenes symbolize kingship while distinguishing Egyptians from outsiders. But currently, many identity questions about ancient Egyptians on the palette remain unresolved. For example, if this depicts Upper Egypt unifying Lower Egypt, are the bowing figures Lower Egyptians or foreigners? Questions like whether the scepter holder is pharaoh or invader still lack scholarly consensus. So, how did ancient Egyptians view themselves? Historically, Egyptians saw themselves between dark skinned, curly haired Africans and light skinned, bearded Asians. But this distinction is overly simplistic, as countless Egyptian portraits show diverse skin tones, ranging from light brown to dark brown to black. Thus arises the question, were Egyptians' ancestors black? This is crucial for understanding Black people's role in early civilization formation. Historically, white Egyptologists, influenced by Eurocentrism and white supremacy, interpreted Egyptians through racist lenses, claiming Pharaonic Egypt descended from superior Near Eastern or European races. Egyptians couldn't possibly have created such a splendid ancient civilization if they had even a drop of Black ancestry. Take Cleopatra, for example. Exceptionally talented and intelligent, yet cunning and skilled in political manipulation. With her charm, she captivated Julius Caesar and bore him a son. For such an iconic Egyptian figure, public debates about her race persist endlessly. So, in the white world, 20th century films about Cleopatra were almost exclusively portrayed by white actors. So, while Black Americans constantly attempt to prove she was Black. But currently, there's insufficient evidence to determine if Egyptians' ancestors were Black. Now, let's discuss scholars' debates on gender in ancient Egypt. Like most artifacts, the Narmer palette primarily depicts male figures. Besides the cow goddess bat at the top, there are no other feminine elements on the palette. Similarly, women are often secondary characters in tomb chapel murals. Thus, earlier studies concluded ancient Egyptian women rarely received education, seldom worked outside textile brewing or baking, and were excluded from management. But such conclusions likely stem from male-dominated Egyptology. Male scholars naturally assumed men should be rulers and managers. In recent decades, with more female Egyptologists, research revealed Egyptian women had higher status than contemporaries elsewhere. And for instance, Egyptian women had divorce rights and could claim 1/3 of husband's property post-divorce. And whereas contemporary Mesopotamian and Hittite laws required widows to marry their husband's brother, if no brother existed, they married his closest relative. Feminist writer Simone de Beauvoir commented on Egyptian women's status in the second sex. In ancient Egypt, women's situation was highly favorable. The women held equal rights to men and maintained human dignity. Beyond its pictorial narratives, the Narmer palette also features hieroglyphic supplements. In 1822, French linguist Champollion announced the successful decipherment of Egyptian hieroglyphs, unlocking translations of vast ancient texts. Thus, ancient Egypt's image has become increasingly comprehensive and accessible. Egyptian hieroglyphs comprised three components: ideograms, for example, circled dot for sun, waves for water; phonetic symbols, e.g., owl for M sound, hill for K sound; and determinatives at word endings to specify meaning. For example, adding male or female symbols after names to indicate gender. However, writing is an advanced cultural artifact, a knowledge vessel. Early societies were elite-controlled, so written records often diverged from facts due to personal, political, or era biases. Whereas excavated artifacts, pottery, crafts, clothing, coins, buildings, are primary sources revealing authentic lives of royalty, nobles, commoners, and socioeconomic conditions. Thus, fully understanding ancient Egypt requires studying both historical texts and archaeological evidence. Well, using the Narmer palette as our guide, we've explored Egyptology's progress through historical, kingship, identity, gender, and writing lenses. Historically, was the Narmer palette created to record a specific event? academia remains divided, awaiting more evidence. Regarding kingship, while divine right fixation persists, each pharaoh's personality profoundly shaped their reign. Egyptian identity studies remain influenced by Eurocentrism and white supremacy. Yet the question endures, were ancient Egyptians' ancestors white or black? Academic circles still debate, but ancient Egyptian women's status was significantly higher than contemporaries in other nations. Beyond basic production and daily life, women could hold managerial positions. In daily life, they could independently participate in rituals like funerals. Egyptian hieroglyphs consisted of three components: ideograms, phonetic symbols, and determinatives. Though writing was an advanced cultural product, early literacy was mainly confined to social elites. Thus, fully understanding Egyptian culture requires deciphering texts while integrating archaeological evidence. And driven by new materials and technologies, Egyptology fields advance rapidly, revealing ancient Egypt's panoramic view. Yet, this panorama remains unclear. Unresolved questions enhance Egypt's allure, compelling our continued search for answers. Well, that concludes our interpretation of Exploring Ancient Egypt. Reading notes are below the audio. Until tomorrow.